You once said kindness is love's language. I forgot how to speak it. If you ever come home, I'll be waiting to relearn." For the first time in years, Evelyn's hands trembled not from anger, but from the quiet ache of memory. She pressed the note to her chest, tears rolling freely down her wrinkled cheeks. 50 years of hurt, silence, and distance melted into that one act. A simple pie, a repaired swing, and a letter that sounded like the man she once loved. And right there, in the fading light of their backyard, she realized something Thomas had known all along. Sometimes, it isn't love that dies, it's kindness that goes missing. Evelyn had stopped setting 2 plates on the table months ago. The silence at dinner was heavier than the food she forced herself to chew. 50 years of marriage had turned their once noisy home into a museum of sighs and closed doors. Thomas sat across from her, buried behind his newspaper, pretending to read. He didn't notice she'd stopped adding sugar to his tea because he'd stopped tasting anything she made. Somewhere between their first gray hair and their last child leaving home, something precious had slipped away unnoticed, unspoken, and now seemingly unrecoverable. They weren't cruel to each other. That would have been easier. Cruelty at least has heat. What existed between them now was worse, a kind of cold politeness that felt like mourning someone who was still alive. Evelyn remembered the man who used to dance with her in the kitchen when the radio played her favorite songs. She remembered the young teacher who brought her daisies on her nursing night shifts, who wrote her clumsy love poems on napkins. But the man across from her now barely spoke, unless it was about bills or his medication schedule. She used to blame age, until she realized they had simply stopped trying. The day she finally said it, "Thomas, I think we should end this." He didn't argue. He just nodded once, folded his paper, and said, "If that's what you want, no anger, no questions." Just quiet defeat. The silence after that was unbearable. Days turned into weeks. Evelyn moved into the guest room. Thomas kept to his recliner and his crossword puzzles. The television was always on, a dull voice filling the space where their laughter used to live. Their children called now and then, but they both lied, said things were fine, that they were just slowing down. But behind Evelyn's calm voice was exhaustion. She was tired of feeling invisible, tired of cooking for a man who didn't notice, tired of pretending that surviving together was the same as living together. The night she packed her last box, rain beat against the windows like applause for her decision. She stood by the doorway, suitcase by her side, looking at Thomas one last time. He didn't lift his head from the crossword. "Goodbye, Thomas," she said softly. "Drive safe," he murmured. That was it. 50 years reduced to 2 words and a hollow silence. But as she walked out, her eyes caught something on the mantel, the framed photo of them from their wedding day. Both smiling like fools, cake on his cheek, laughter in her eyes. She hesitated, fingers brushing the glass. Then she turned away and drove off into the rain. When the door closed, Thomas finally looked up. The crossword lay unfinished, his glasses fogged. On the kitchen counter, her wedding ring glimmered faintly beside an untouched cup of tea, the last thing she'd made for him. He sat there for a long time, staring at the ring, until his reflection in the window blurred with tears he refused to wipe away. The house felt wrong without her. Too clean, too quiet, too still. Thomas found himself moving through the rooms like a ghost, touching the empty spaces she used to fill. Her teacup still sat by the sink. Her scent, lavender, and old books lingered faintly on the couch. Every corner of the house whispered her name, and yet she was gone. He told himself it was for the best. After all, what good was clinging to something that had clearly run its course? But at night, when the wind whistled through the cracks of the old windows, he caught himself listening, hoping to hear her slippers brushing across the tiles, her soft hum from the kitchen. 3 days after she left, while searching for his reading glasses, Thomas opened the drawer of her old nightstand. Inside, he found an old leather-bound notebook tied with a faded ribbon. He recognized Evelyn's handwriting instantly. Curiosity got the better of him. He sat on the edge of the bed, opened the first page, and the words hit like a quiet storm. Things I never want to forget about Thomas. The way he laughs when he tries to whistle. How he warms my hands in church when they get cold. How he says darling like it's a secret only for me. The way he fixed the leaky roof in the rain so I wouldn't worry. How he dances terribly, but always with heart. Page after page, she had written tiny memories of him, the man he used to be. And as he read, something inside him cracked open. He had become a stranger even to himself. Somewhere between retirement, sickness, and the endless sameness of their days, he'd stopped showing love. He had loved her in his mind, but not in his actions. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Evelyn's words echoing like prayers he'd forgotten how to say. By morning, he'd made a decision. Not a grand one, just a quiet one. He wanted to do one last kind thing for her. Not to win her back, not to undo the past, but because she deserved that kindness, without reason or condition. He shuffled to the kitchen, dusted off the old recipe book, and turned to the page with her handwriting. Apple pie, use extra cinnamon for warmth. It was her favorite. She used to make it every anniversary, even when they stopped celebrating them. His hands trembled as he peeled the apples. He burned the first batch of crust. He dropped the sugar jar. But he kept going, muttering to himself the way she used to. By the third attempt, the smell was right sweet, buttery, and nostalgic. When the pie cooled, he carried it outside to the garden. The swing had been broken for years. The rope snapped, the seat split. She used to say, "We should fix this someday." Someday never came. So he fetched his old tools, hands shaking, knees aching. For hours, he worked under the afternoon sun, mending the seat and tightening the ropes until the swing stood steady again. It wasn't perfect, but it was whole like the promise they once made to each other. When everything was done, he placed the pie on the swing, her wedding ring beside it, and tucked the letter underneath. The ink smeared from his tears as he wrote, "You once said kindness is love's language. I forgot how to speak it. If you ever come home, I'll be waiting to relearn." He stepped back and looked at what he'd made. A simple swing, a pie, a note. Nothing grand, nothing loud. Just one last act of love whispered into the world. Then, with quiet finality, he sat on the porch, waiting. The sky dimmed. The first stars appeared. And somewhere down the road, headlights turned into the driveway. Evelyn had come home. The car engine cut off, leaving only the soft chirp of crickets. Evelyn sat still behind the wheel, her breath caught between disbelief and heartbreak. Through the window, she could see the faint glow of the porch light and the garden swing newly repaired, gently rocking in the wind like it was waving her home. The smell reached her before she even stepped out. Apple pie, warm and sweet, the same scent that had filled their kitchen on birthdays and anniversaries, long gone. Her throat tightened. She walked closer, each step slower than the last. The swing creaked softly, and there it was, her ring, his handwriting, that single folded note. She read it once, then again before her knees gave way, and she sank into the damp grass, clutching the paper to her chest. It wasn't just the words. It was the effort, the tenderness, the thought of him baking of Thomas, with his shaky hands and fading memory, doing something this gentle. After all the bitterness, after all the silence, this was the man she fell in love with. She stayed there for a long moment, weeping quietly into the night, until she saw him, Thomas, standing by the doorway. His shoulders slumped, his face pale in the porch light, but his eyes looked young again. He didn't move at first, neither did she. 50 years stood between them, years of laughter, children, grief, and distance. Then, Thomas took a careful step forward. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said softly. Evelyn wiped her tears. "Neither was I." He nodded, looking at the swing. "It's not perfect, but it holds." She managed a trembling smile. "Like us." That simple exchange broke something. Open a silence that had been years thick began to thin, like dawn breaking after too long a night. She walked up the porch steps, stopping in front of him. "I read your note," she said. "You remembered the cinnamon." "I burned the first two," he replied, and they both laughed. real shaky laughter that sounded like forgiveness. Inside, the house felt different, not because anything had changed, but because she had come back. Thomas poured her tea the way he used to, fumbling with the sugar like it was a sacred ritual. They sat by the window, steam curling between them. "I don't want to undo the past," he said after a while. "I just want to be kind again. To you, to us." Evelyn looked at him, eyes soft. "That's all I ever wanted, Thomas. Just kindness. Not flowers, not trips, just tenderness." They sat in silence, watching the night through the glass. Outside, the swing moved gently, casting slow shadows across the garden. She reached for his hand. It was rough, warm, familiar like home. The next morning, their children arrived, surprised to find both of them there. The divorce papers sat untouched on the table, next to 2 empty plates and crumbs of pie. Thomas was out in the garden, tightening the ropes of the swing again. Evelyn stood by the kitchen window, watching him, humming an old tune from their wedding day. When he looked up and caught her gaze, he smiled. She smiled back. No grand words, no apologies. Just the kind of quiet understanding that takes a lifetime to build and almost a lifetime to remember. As the sun rose, lighting up the old house, Evelyn slipped her ring back on her finger. Thomas saw it, and for a moment, time folded neatly back on itself. 50 years had almost ended, but love, true love, had found its way home through one small act of kindness. It wasn't passion that saved them, nor promises, nor the ghosts of what once was. It was the choice to be kind again.